Monster Hunter has always been a game of hunting large, charismatic monsters, but increasingly around these hunts we've been getting a more realistic ecosystem presented to us to explore, with plants of various types without just one or two gathering piles per map, and small endemic life of all varieties to capture or use in some way. This started in World and has been continued in Rise with quite the selection of critters for us to find. It's quite enhanced the feeling of actually being in a living ecosystem and a place where monsters and humans interact. In a previous video I covered a variety of endemic life in the form of the Umibozu-inspired monk snail, although frankly that thing is more than large enough to act as the target of a siege quest and is orders of magnitude larger than the average endemic life specimen. I thought it'd be the most fitting to do the other individual endemic life species from Rise that have real-world mythological and legendary connections in one video, rather than one for each species. So let's take a look at the inspirations and references for 5 of Rise endemic life: the Felicicrow, Fortune Owl, Hellbill, Quetzalcobra and Snow-Faced Fox. One of the 2 species of lucky life, Felicicrow, can be found in multiple biomes and are notable for their beautiful feathers and ability to grant you good luck with your hunting and gathering. Most notably for our purposes, however, is that this species' tail feather are highly developed to support the creature's weight, to the point that the Felicicrow can use them as a third leg. This is actually an anatomical feature some real-world birds possess. Woodpeckers and woodcreepers have stiff and reinforced tail feathers that they use to brace themselves against the trees that they land on. Although whether Felicicrow used them for this purpose is difficult to tell, we mostly find them on the ground, after all. Felicicrow takes its inspiration from the legends of 3-legged crows that exist throughout East Asia, and likely originate in China. These are sacred creatures associated with the sun and are highly auspicious. In China they have multiple names, and once it is said that there were 10 of them, each the child of a solar deity and a sun to themselves. The 10 would settle in a sacred fusang tree and would cycle in turns to sit in a carriage and be drawn across the sky to bring sunlight to the world. Upon returning, the next would enter the carriage and be carried the same way. But alas, one day all 10 emerged at the same time and caused the world to burn, until the celestial archer Ho-Yi shot down all but one. In Japan, the crow is a sacred creature of the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu no Mikoto, and the 3-legged crow likely emerged with older native myths into the Japanese version of the creature, known as the Yatagarasu. This name means 8-span crow, referring to its size, which is said to be 8 times the space between an outstretched thumb and the middle finger, a poetic way of saying it's quite a large bird. His 3 legs represent heaven, earth and mankind, and 3 virtues of the gods: wisdom, benevolence and valor. According to the Kojiki, Japan's eldest text and half-historical, half-mythological piece, the Yatagarasu is an incarnation or avatar of the kami Kamo Takesenumi, who appeared to guide a descendant of Amaterasu and the ancestor of the Japanese imperial family, the Emperor Jinmu. Yatagarasu led Emperor Jinmu and his people through the mountains when they were lost, and to a part of Japan that is now known as Nara. Here Jinmu became the first emperor of Japan, a bit of extraordinary and divine good luck brought about by a 3-legged crow. Even if the hunter does not end up as emperor over the lands around Kimura, the Yatagarasu's inspiration for the Felicicrow will certainly bring us good luck. The other form of lucky life, alongside the Felicicrow, is the Fortune Owl, which can be found in many of the same habitats. If you have passed a Japanese restaurant, been to Japan, or even seen enough Japanese media, then you've likely seen one of these cat statues with one or both paws raised into the air. They often have a coin around their neck and some internal device so that the raised paw in question can swing back and forth in a beckoning gesture. These are called Maneki-Neko and are believed to bring good luck. Cats in Japan have long been a mixed bag. A cat that lives 100 years, in the vein of many yokai, becomes endowed with supernatural abilities and becomes a Nekomata, and an evil Nekomata becomes a Bake-Neko, an undead raising monster that can grow to the size of a tiger and devour people that stray into their mountains. On the other hand, of course, cats control pests, and certainly to farmers were believed to be lucky. A Maneki-Neko with its right paw raised is said to bring economic fortune, and one with its left is said to bring in customers, whilst a black Maneki-Neko repels evil spirits, and a red one does the same for smallpox and measles. The fortune owl's cat-like face is only one of several links back to the Maneki-Neko. Its various colours of black, red and gold are all auspicious enough in their own regards. The golden patch of feathers on its chest are placed in almost exactly the same location as where the gold Koban coin is often placed or held by the Maneki-Neko statue as well. And on the in-game model the patch is more triangular in shape, but in the in-game icon, which is how villagers often know and depict this species of the world, this patch is shaped as an oval. A bit of reality versus culture and how they can interact and change. Perhaps somewhere a resident of Kimura village has a little fortune owl statue that straight up has a coin below its chin. Finally, and this is a feature I personally only saw when I really looked at the icon again in detail, but look at the top of the wings. Don't these distinctive feathers, or perhaps even claws, almost resemble the cat-like paws of a Maneki-Neko, both raised to bring in economic fortune and attract customers? They even appear to have little claws, especially in the painting. With both of the Lucky Life endemic species out of the way, it's time to look a little more in depth into 3 of the rarer Endemic Life varieties, discoverable only on 1 map each. Found in the lava caverns, the Hellbill is a somewhat radiant creature with its burning bright feathers. Its inspiration is quite clear from the get-go if you're a fan of Harry Potter or know your Western myths as the Phoenix. Phoenixes are of course famous for their supposed ability to resurrect themselves by building a nest of rare and exotic substances, especially myrrh, and then being consumed in a fiery rebirth to begin their life anew. These birds date relatively far back in history as well. Their first mention by name is in the works of Hesiod, a 6th century poet, although the first clear description is from Herodotus a century later, in which he attributes the bird to come from Arabia and travelled to the Temple of the Sun in Egypt to bury their dead, with no mention of the traditional fiery resurrection. Japan has a vaguely analogous equivalent to the phoenix in the form of the ho-oh, a version of the Feng Huan bird found throughout East Asia. This creature lacks the fiery rebirth of the phoenix and is instead a creature of utter peace, appearing only when there is no war and the people are prosperous and happy, and fleeing to the heavens at the first sign of conflict. Thus the appearance of one of these birds is a sign of a new and better era. We can tell that the Hellbill is not based on the ho-oh because of its biology. Ho-oh are said to have the beak of a rooster, the jaw of a swallow, the neck of a snake, back of a tortoise, legs of a crane, and tail of a peacock, whilst the Hellbill seems far closer in body to a peacock alone, which are often touted to be the real-life inspiration for the Western Phoenix. As a side note, anyone who thinks that the name of this yokai sounds familiar, well, it acted as the inspiration and namesake for the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh. The fact that the Rise developers did not use the closest yokai equivalent to the Phoenix is interesting. Perhaps the desire to have a fiery bird that bathes in magma was too great. In either case, a similar myth seems to exist in the world of Monster Hunter as to the real world, or at least around Kimura village. The elusive Hellbill bathes in magma as a means to clean itself of dirt and parasites in the similar way to real-world birds use water or dust baths, and which, to the local people, has long been associated with rebirth in this species. To be honest, the exact reasoning for the Hellbill's behaviour is immaterial in justifying the reference back to the Phoenix, though it's nice that they linked it back in some way to real-world ecology. Bathing in magma aside, most things die if they try that. If the Hellbill only had limited connections to yokai of any sort, then the next species unfortunately has none at all, although it did not seem right to leave it out in a video about the cultural origins of various endemic life. The elusive Quetzalcobra can be found in the pyramid of the flooded forest, and can be based on none other than the feathered serpent god of the Aztecs, Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is just one of the many forms that feathered serpent deities have taken over the millennium in Mesoamerican culture, with the first noted instances being in the Olmec culture, and from there spread and assimilated into others. The most famous depiction is without doubt the aforementioned Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god of wind, the planet Venus, and learning, among many other things. Quetzalcoatl is quite important in the Aztec creation myth as well, and acted as the second sun after the first round of creation failed due to him knocking the sun out of the sky with a stone club. Although his tenure as the sun failed when the humans he had created were transformed into monkeys when they failed to venerate the gods, and Quetzalcoatl stepped down for the next god to give it a go. Seeing as we are in the time of the fifth sun, they were not particularly successful. The exact name and nature of the ancient civilization that once inhabited the flooded forest is difficult to know. Whilst they did leave carvings behind in various places, most notably the inner room at the top of the temple, I doubt they were intended to have any great meaning. Even if they did, I would not be the person to decipher them, that much is for certain. The relic records of the flooded forest also give us no information at all that could provide any manner of further link or information to indicate the manner of worship or the beliefs of the people that built the enormous pyramid for Quetzalcobra. Perhaps fitting, seeing how little is known about the Quetzalcobra and how its description mentions that it just wants to live a life free of fuss. But it would be nice to know whether Quetzalcobra was credited by these ancient people with having created the world. Interestingly, the description for the Quetzalcobra mentions that the fluid it secretes from its mouth has healing properties. There is plenty of research going on the healing-promoting properties of saliva in various forms, in efforts to isolate the compounds responsible, but I could find nothing in terms of Mesoamerican myths about healing spit, I'm afraid. It's certainly possible that I could just not find the recorded mentions for certain. It could also be that Quetzalcobra's healing fluid is simply a fun tidbit, but in terms of concrete links to Quetzalcoatl, this is something of a dead end, as healing or medicine is not a trait or purview I've found the feathered serpent to possess at all. Perhaps the truth will remain hidden away, just like the Quetzalcobra itself. The snow-faced fox is the unique and rare endemic life of the shrine ruins, and is quite the interesting beast. Whilst it appears to have a tail that splits into 9 parts, it's instead one large bushy mass, with tufts that resemble additional tail ends. Foxes are extremely prevalent in Japanese myths and legends. As with many other regions of the world, they are depicted as being tricksters, but also have plenty of other supernatural features. Just with cats, tanuki, and many other things, when a fox reaches 100 years old, it awakens to magical powers, such as shape-shifting, control over balls of fire called kitsune-bi, and even the ability to possess people, and they gain an additional tail for each century after the first, so that they can have a maximum of 9 by the time they reach 1000. At this point they transform into a tenko and ascend into the heavens to become an immortal. Japanese foxes are known as kitsune, and the Pokemon Ninetales or Naruto's Kurama are perhaps the most well-known instances of nine-tailed foxes in modern pop culture, although for the most part these immensely powerful beings are both rare and in many cases barely concern themselves with humanity, apart from one very, very famous example. The Kitsune Tamamo no Mae is one of the 3 most evil yokai in Japan, alongside Shuten Doji the Oni and Emperor Sutaku of the Tengu. Born in China and already a 9-tails, this evil fox possessed the concubine of the last emperor of China's Shang dynasty, Daiji, and her evils caused its downfall. From there she fled to India and caused all manner of further evils under the guise of Lady Kayo, concubine of Prince Banzoku, and returning to China once more after she fled from there as well, and crossing the sea to Japan, where she intentionally reincarnated as the beautiful Tamamo no Mae, and became the favoured courtesan of Emperor Toba before her identity was revealed and she was slain by a pair of legendary archers. Even in death, her spirit was so deadly and powerful that the stone she was slain upon became a cursed object, killing anyone who touched it until it was exorcised by a monk from her spirit and evil. Fortunately, the snow-faced fox is neither magically powerful nor a malevolent femme fatale. It's even described as being quite playful by nature. As noted before at the beginning of this section and in the description for the creature itself, the snow-faced fox has the appearance of actually having 9 tails, calling upon the motif of these highest among kitsune that have lived for 1,000 years. Although beyond this aspect, there's little more to comment on when it comes to the creature's biology or morphology. Interestingly, the snow-faced fox sits atop the entrance to the shrine ruins, which may be referencing back to Myobo, the fox statues that guard the entrances to Inari shrines, Inari being the goddess of rice cultivation. A third of all shrines in Japan are dedicated to her, and her sacred messengers are always foxes. Standing atop the gate to this sacred shrine ruins, the snow-faced fox may not be an envoy of a goddess, but its posing and regal tails certainly call back to Inari's favourite messengers and servants. And there we go, 5 species of endemic life and their cultural origins. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. It was certainly fun to look and research into each of these. Endemic life and looking for it has rapidly become one of my favourite activities in new Monster Hunter games. And when I begin to realise that some have links, I just had to make a video about it. If anyone can find further links between these rare and fascinating examples of endemic life, please let me know. I'd be interested to learn more for each. But until next time, happy hunting everyone.